Are you in control of your life? While there might be forces or even people that can influence the direction that your life goes, I really believe that at the end of the day, you are in control because you are the active decider in your life. But that begs the question, if you are the one deciding, what guides those decisions? There's the big picture of how you were raised and how you were educated. But on a day-to-day basis, what if the subtle differences between the actions you take and don't take, between finding balance and being burnt out, between your stress and your success, is simply the words you say to yourself? Not the things that are happening, like your job and your work deadlines and the people you interact with, but rather the way you think about those things. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Leviton, and I help high achievers just like you who feel stuck bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Traditional self-help doesn't work. It's either too rigid, too generic, or too overwhelming. My approach is different. I simplify change by making it so easy it can't not happen. Using my easier framework, I'll help you create habits, routines, and behaviors that stick for good, so you can stop struggling and start thriving. It's that easy. Today, I'm excited for you to hear my conversation with Judy Belmont. Judy is a psychotherapist, a speaker, and the author of over 10 books on topics like psychotherapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, like her most recent book, 110 CBT Tips and Tools. For over 40 years, Judy has helped people untangle their negative self-talk, manage stress, and live happier, healthier lives. In today's episode, you'll hear why stress isn't always your enemy, and how chasing meaning can make stress your ally, the truth about ANTs, ANTs, autonomic negative thoughts, and how to stop letting them run your life, Judy's ABCDE method for reframing irrational thoughts before they spiral, and the powerful difference between being a victim or a victor in life. If you've ever felt crushed by your own thoughts, stuck in the shoulds, or unable to forgive yourself for past mistakes, this episode will give you practical, compassionate tools to reclaim your peace of mind. And with that, let's get into this conversation with Judy Belmont. How do you define self-care?
Self-care is basically what it says is making yourself a priority, taking care of yourself and doing what you need to do to be centered and healthy. A lot of times people confuse self-care with being selfish, and they think taking time for themselves is not a good thing. But I use the example of the flight attendant telling the passengers on a plane, before you help anybody else, those with young children, put your mask on yourself first. It's a very common image that people use for self-care, and it bears repeating.
Yeah, I totally agree. This secure your mask is something that I think about a lot. And especially in my own background, I started as a personal trainer and a nutrition coach. And in that world, that comes up a lot, where a lot of people, when they're talking about going to the gym and exercising and carving time out of their already busy day, it comes up a lot like, oh, well, I don't have time for this. I have to take my kids to soccer, I have to work, I have to do a million other things. But then if we don't ever do for ourselves, we kind of fizzle out, burn out. So how can we find balance in this world in 2025, 2026, where there's always more to do? How can we find time to prioritize simply feeling good?
That's a great question, and that's really a real struggle for a lot of people, because you take time for yourself, then you think, well, I really have the dishes to do, I have to take the kids to soccer, I have all these other things, and people feel very guilty taking time for themselves. And so some of it just takes planning. And if you find that you're running on empty, you realize that's not good for anybody, because you might be short with other people. You might be more anxious or depressed, not feeling as centered. So it's all about balance. And I think of a rubber band. If you stretch it too much, it's going to snap. But if you don't stretch it enough, it's going to be limp and lifeless. So you need just enough stress so that you can feel engaged and committed, but you need to have a balance. You don't want to stretch it too much, but you also don't want to feel like you have no self-care, and then you're going to feel kind of alienated and not engaged. And it's going to be a lot of have tos. I have to do this, I have to do that. It would be good to change self-talk to I choose to.
Hey, real quick, we'll be back to the show in just a few seconds. But right now, I have to tell you about the free Change Made Easy private Facebook community. If you want to join hundreds of change seekers just like you and get free trainings, resources, and direct help from me in order to help make your quest for change easy, then click the link in the show notes that says Facebook group now. You'll be directed to my private Facebook group that I created just for clients and listeners of this podcast. And as a bonus, you'll get a free hour-long training on eliminating self-sabotage. All you have to do is click Facebook group in whatever podcast app you're listening on right now. Okay, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, I want to come back to that. Self-talk is something that I'm huge about, but something that you said there, I love that analogy of the rubber band. It's the Goldilocks principle. Not too hot, not too cold. We got to get it just right. But you mentioned there, if you pull it too far, it snaps. If you don't pull it enough, it's limp. And that we need to have the right amount of stress. And I'm interested in how you use the word stress, because I think a lot of people, myself potentially included, when we hear stress, we think inherently negative. I'm so stressed. Life is stressful. So how are you using stress in that context?
It's interesting. When I used to do a lot of live presentations on mental health issues, and often in my PowerPoint, I would have a screen that says stress is blank. And I would say to the people in the presentation, call out the first thing that comes to your mind. And it is usually negative stuff, debilitating, too much to do, too little time, my job, kids. But a lot of it was meant in a negative way. And then the next PowerPoint slide, I would have a wedding ceremony, someone speaking in front of a group. I would have watching your children in a sports team, or playing on a sports team, or watching a professional sports team. I'd have all these stressful situations that people ask for. And I said, stress isn't inherently bad. It's your take on stress that's bad. You want to feel stressed so you can be successful, engaged, committed. One of the sorriest kind of things that people could say is, I don't know, I don't care. They don't have enough positive stress in their life. They don't feel engaged, committed. So I would say feeling challenged, committed is stressful, but it's good. So chase meaning. Don't avoid stress. Just chase meaning.
Chase meaning, but don't avoid stress is, I think, a very powerful takeaway for those listening. I really like that juxtaposition. And now it kind of latches perfectly onto what you were saying before about self-talk, because as you said, stress, you're giving these presentations, people are guessing stress is bad, stress is horrible, stress leads to burnout, stress is all these things. And then to your point, there are plenty of times in life where not only do we theoretically enjoy stress, but we choose it. You go to a sports game to be agitated over the ref's wrong calls. You plan the wedding, which pretty much every person that I know that's married has said it was the most stressful day of their lives.
Right.
And yet everyone continues to do it.
Exactly.
And then also calls it the best day of their lives.
Right.
So all of this then comes back to, if the differentiator is simply what goes on in our head, two-part question. A is, why would it ever be negative? If it's as simple as a choice to be positive or be negative, why are so many of our decisions negative? And then B, how do we start to slide that scale to be the person who sees the stressful thing as a worthwhile challenge rather than the thing that is soul crushing?
Another great question. I differentiate between being a stress manager and a stress carrier. A stress manager embraces stress and feels like they're in control of it. Stress gets negative when it's out of your control. If you say, oh, my coworker stresses me out, you think you're a victim, so you're not able to be what I call a victor. So a lot of it is your mindset. And there's actually a field in psychology called mindset science. If you think stress is negative, you're going to carry it instead of manage it. So it's all about having a sense of control. I'm in control of my emotions. I'm in control of my stress. And it's up to us if stress is motivating or debilitating. Stress is a great motivator. And it's only negative when there's things we don't have control over. For instance, when there's things that you really can't control, particularly if there's life threatening. But most things in life that people are stressed about are often not life threatening, and they still treat it like it's the worst thing that ever happened to them.
Yeah, it's a great point. Theoretically, there are things that are outside of our control and things that are too big to not worry about, but that isn't most things. And I think that reveals one of the inherent challenges in all of this is that it feels like that to me when I'm going through my thing, whatever my thing is. My thing could be a flat tire. My thing could be missing my alarm and being late for a meeting. My thing could be my kid not getting into the college they wanted. That thing to my body and my subconscious feels as real as a cancer diagnosis, as the tiger that's going to eat me when I was
Mhm.
a hunter in the Serengeti 10,000 years ago. So how do I start to separate those things when logically, usually in my experience as a coach and just as a human, in my experience after the fact, we can see that.
Right.
After the fact, when everything is calmed down, when I'm removed from it, I can go, wow, I really overreacted, or wow, that wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was. But in the moment is when it matters. And in the moment, it feels so real to me. So do you have any techniques or
Yes,
any tips for people? Yeah, go ahead,
this
please.
is a great segue into basically the basis of my books and the basics of the therapy. I'm a retired therapist, but the basics of my therapeutic relationships. And that is separating thoughts and feelings. When you're saying it feels like, a cancer diagnosis, it feels like that. It only feels that way because our thoughts are erroneous. We're filled with cognitive distortions. So let's take your kid not getting into the college of their choice. It's terrible. It's awful. The self talk is irrational, and then you're going to feel bad. So often people don't realize their feelings result from irrational thoughts. And those irrational thoughts are characterized by cognitive distortions. All or nothing thinking, fortune telling, I'll never get over this. It's terrible this happened to me. Those are a couple examples of cognitive distortions. So, what I had my clients do is write down the thought and ask, is it rational or irrational? Is it fact or fiction? Is it temporary thinking or permanent thinking? For example, I'll never get over this, or I'm a failure. Well, that's permanent thinking. Temporary is I've had a lot of setbacks and I'm disappointed on where I am in my life. One is grounded and the other one is paralyzing. So it shows the importance of focusing on your thoughts that create that feeling. The feelings don't come on its own, it comes from the way that we think. And we often don't catch it because they're ants, automatic negative thoughts. They happen so quickly, we don't even know they're happening.
Yeah, so many good pieces there that I think are important for people to understand. So I want to kind of break each down individually. First, I talk a lot about black and white thinking on here, perfectionism. What I haven't touched on as much is fortune telling, which is, I think, equally as important, kind of similar, but in a different way. So if I'm understanding correctly, all or nothing thinking would be something like, I can't finish this project on time, so there's no point in trying. Or I haven't been able to be successful at XYZ in the past. Every time I've tried to lose weight in the past, it hasn't worked, so
Okay.
I can never lose weight.
Right.
So
That would be all or nothing thinking, and also fortune telling. A lot of times your sentences might have 2 or 3 cognitive distortions in that sentence.
now how do I start to unravel that when it's not purposeful? Like, again, it goes, if I was doing it on purpose, like, I would just stop doing it. But how can I stop doing something that's happening without my knowledge even?
You have to identify the ants. And one technique that I have in my books is the ABCs. It's like an ABC log, but it's an emotional log. A is an act or an event, and C is the consequence. Boyfriend broke up with me. The consequence is feeling devastated, and behavior, crying and not being able to go out of the house. Did boyfriend break up with you have to cause C, A to C? No. What is that B in the middle that makes or break it? So in a log, I would have a client, for instance, say the situation, focus on their reactions, feelings, and their behaviors. And then the middle is, what were my beliefs? I'll never love again. He was the only one for me. I'm nothing without him. Talk about all or nothing thinking. And then the D is dispute. Who says that I won't find anybody else? So we can see that's irrational, but people think that when they're going through a divorce when they're 50 or 60. They might say the same things, equally as irrational. So the E, so we went through A, B, C, D, and the E is the effect of more healthier thinking. I am in pain right now, and I hope to meet someone else. And I've learned a lot through this relationship. Having a log like that can help isolate the thoughts and also to identify the type of distortion it is.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful. And I love, listeners know I love acronyms. So ANTS, automatic negative thoughts.
Right.
That's the thing that we're trying to lower the instance of. I feel like we can't make these things go away. This is part of human nature.
Just identify it. Just
Right.
imagine yourself having a magnifying glass. In some of my programs, I would give out these little toy magnifying glasses that I would get, online to remind people to identify their thinking, identify their self-talk, because anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, a lot of issues people have to do with negative self-talk.
Yeah, totally. Negative self-talk. When I teach courses on this stuff about behavior change and happiness and all that stuff, self-talk is usually first, if not one of the first chapters or modules or anything like that. Like, it's so paramount. It's so important. It is the thing that everything else is built on. The
Exactly.
stuff that goes on inside of our heads becomes the stuff that we say, the stuff that we do, the people that we are. So I'm right there with you. Self-talk is huge. Thought distortions are everywhere, and learning to identify them and then suss them out, like you do with your ABC method. And I appreciate you giving that to the listeners. I'm curious if there's anything. You've been a psychotherapist and in the field of helping people change for over 40 years. Curious, aside from the thought distortions and self-talk, if there are any other common issues that you've seen that limit people's effectiveness in living happier, healthier, more fulfilling lives?
A lot of people hold grudges. A lot of people are unforgiving, and not only to others, but themselves. They're steeped in regret. They berate themselves for not having the foresight to know what is now so obvious in hindsight. And they have a hard time forgiving others too. And I think that practicing gratitude, forgiveness is huge. Let's take the example of forgiving yourself or having self compassion. Think of a bill of any denomination, 5, 10, 20, 100, it doesn't matter. Imagine crumpling it up, stepping on it, folding it, opening it up again. And this is what I would do in my live presentations. How much is it worth? Still the same amount. So no matter how you're crushed and you're beaten down and stepped on and you feel like life has kind of trodden over you, you're still worthy. You are just as beautiful as the day you were born. We don't look at newborns in a nursery and say, oh, this one's cuter than the other, or this one's better than the other. They're all beautiful. They're beautiful lives. And that never really changes, but we think it does.
I love that analogy of the crumpled up dollar. I think that's very powerful. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious, either in your opinion or if you have actual learned reason for why this is, why do you believe that it's so hard for us to forgive ourselves? We'll often forgive other people, although people do hold grudges, like you said. It's usually much easier to forgive someone. We hold ourselves to a much higher standard. Someone else makes a mistake. It's like, yeah, well, obviously everyone makes mistakes. But when I make a mistake, I should have known better.
Exactly. So the shoulds is a type of cognitive distortion when you should on yourself or others. I should have known better. I should have done that. So that would be an example. But I actually have an exercise in my latest book, 110 CBT Tips and Tools. And that is write down the negative things you say to yourself that keep you stuck. And then imagine that someone you really admire, someone that you really love and is close to you, says the same thing. How would your reaction be different? You would be empathetic. You would be nice. We reserve the worst things to say to ourselves. And that is a very common thing. People are much harder than on themselves, but they think that they deserve it. I've had clients that say, I feel like if I don't kind of like prod myself, then I'm going to slack off. They think that it helps motivate them. It just really makes you sadder.
So I love that you said that. And this is maybe a little bit for myself personally, but you brought up the concept of like deserving, and
Mhm.
fairness is another one that I kind of group into this. It's like that are all should. We have this, I think, inherently built into us of like what is fair, what is just, and we don't like when things aren't fair. So that could be, I do the same amount of work as Larry and Larry gets paid more than me. That inherently feels wrong. But in life, there is no morality or judge that sits on high and tells us what to do or dictates what is right and wrong and good and bad. But we still stay beholden to these value systems. And so many people, their actions are guided by this innate sense of justice, deserving, fairness, morality. And it holds people back from actually doing what they need to do. So, how do you work with someone to start to not see everything in such a, I guess, black and white way? Now we're coming back full circle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's great questions and great comment. So Albert Ellis had a type of therapy that was the precursor to cognitive behavior therapy called RET, rational motive therapy. And he had like 10 basic irrational assumptions that cause people a lot of pain. And one of them is the world and other. I think this is exactly what was like his point. I think for word, the world and other people should be fair, and justice and mercy must triumph. That was actually on a handout that I gave with the 10 irrational beliefs, according to Albert Ellis. And that's exactly right. People think that life should be fair. But you know what? I'll never forget when I was in college, a professor, someone whined about a grade or something like that. It was a big lecture hall. And she said, "It's not fair." And he looked at her and said, "You know what? Some people die before others, and that's not fair. Life is not fair." And I thought, wow, what a strange thing to say. It was a psychology professor. And I'm thinking, wow. And a couple years later, when I was in graduate school and learned about Albert Ellis, and I thought, wow, I remember that. Like, and there was a stillness in the class because she acted irrationally and called out in front of probably 200 people, "It's not fair." And he said, life's not fair. And you know what? It would be nice if life was fair, but it isn't. And we could try to do as much as we can to stand up for what we believe in. But when we have the shoulds and stand on ceremony, then we are going to be a victim instead of a victor, because we're going to be controlled by these expectations that are fallible.
Yeah, so important. And I've done countless episodes on these topics in the past, and I've had so many guests on talking about this same type of stuff. And I will continue to have these same conversations because I think that this is at the crux of everything. Like,
Yeah.
the stuff that you're talking about right now is at the root of all discontent, discomfort, suffering, sadness, like all of the negative emotions.
Exactly.
I mean, and this is Buddhism, this is the Tao, this is everything, wanting things to be different than they are. I call it arguing with reality of it should be like this, but it's not.
Wanting's
Want,
okay. Expecting is not okay.
I love that. Can you differentiate those for me?
Sure. So if you go to a furniture store, you're not expecting to buy milk. And a lot of people expect people to give them things, or they expect life to give them things that life or other people don't have to give. And so when you expect something that you can want it as much as you want. Let's say you want this person to really like you and not want to break up with you. Wanting is fine. Expecting it is something different, because I'm doing everything right. They should love me. You can't change the neurons in someone's brain from not loving to being loving. And you can tell yourself and watch yourself talk to make sure you're not keeping yourself stuck.
Yeah, I think that is so important. Specifically, that you can't expect people to be a certain way, and that you can't expect life to be a certain way. Going back to life isn't fair. I expect life to be
Right.
fair,
Yeah.
and as long as I expect that, I'm going to be in for a lot of disappointment. And the way I explain this to clients is, like you just said, wanting is fine. It's a natural part of
That's fine.
life. Even expectations, I think that it's the emotional attachment that we get to these things. I want Susie to have feelings for me. Okay, me too. But I want Susie to have feelings for me, and if she doesn't, then I'm going to flail and cry and woe is me and the world is over. Or I expect her, she should, because I bought her flowers. This is where we get unrealistic. And again, coming full circle, we've come back to, we're now trying to control things that we don't have control over.
Right. And you might be saying, because Susie doesn't like me, she's causing me pain. She's making me cry. Guess what? That's not true. I am crying. I am in pain in response to that rejection. Big difference. One is you are a victim of someone else, and when you're a victor.
Yeah, I love that distinction. And I appreciate all of the victor versus victim setups that you gave, because that's really what we're looking for. What I'm looking for in this podcast to help people, and what I think what we're looking for in life is to be the victor in life rather than being the victim. So
Yeah.
I appreciate all of that so much, Judy. The last two questions that I have for you are the same questions I ask every guest. And the first is, what is the change that you want to see in the world?
Wow, I would love for there to be more peace and kindness. I think things in the world have gotten so out of hand. There's so much craziness, there's so much irrationality, so much aggression, people against people, country against country. It's devastating because there's real effects. People are dying, people are suffering. And I just wish there would be more kindness.
I mean, I don't know who could disagree with that. So I'm right there with you. Last question. If you had one action step that listeners could take right now, today, as soon as this episode ends, as soon as they take their headphones off, to start making whatever change they're looking to make in their life just a little bit easier, what would that action step be?
Remember that you're just as worthy as the day you were born, and you're beautiful the way you are.
Don't forget about the free Change Made Easy private Facebook community. Come join hundreds of change seekers just like you and receive free trainings, resources, and direct help from me that will help make your quest for change easy. Just go into the show notes of whatever app you're on right now and click the link that says Facebook group. You'll be directed to my private Facebook community that's just for clients and listeners of this podcast. And as a bonus, you'll get a free hour-long training on eliminating self-sabotage. All you have to do is click Facebook group in whatever app you're listening on right now.